making headlines this hour. The president officially inaugurates the commencement of construction of Islamic University of Maldives. A Dogan class fund scholarships will open this week.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to PSM News in English with me, Hafiz Abd Sattar. And now the news in detail. President Dr. Mohammad Muiz officially inaugurates the commencement of construction of Islamic University of Maldives, IUM's Sanabil building. At the ceremony held at the construction site in Hulumale on a Saturday evening, President Dr. Muiz poured the first concrete to signify the start of the building works. The IUM Sanabil project aims to ensure a sustainable source of income for the university while leasing out the upcoming 7-story mixed-use complex. The building will feature office spaces, meeting rooms, auditoriums, a food court, and commercial parking spaces. The first of its kind IUM Sanabil project was launched for subscription as a Sukuk Istisna facility on 11th August 2024. Bank of Maldives BML Islamic was the sole subscriber when the deadline came to a close. The construction is expected to be completed within 18 months. The government has reaffirmed its commitment fully support for the strengthening and empowerment of national institutions. President Dr. Mohammad Muiz extended his warm congratulations and felicitations on the occasion of the 59th anniversary of the Velana International Airport, VIA. In a post shared on social media, President Dr. Muiz conveyed heartfelt greetings and well wishes to the staff and management, both past and present, of the airport operator, Maldives Airports Company Limited, MACL. VIA, then named Hulule Airport, was opened on 12th April 1966. The first commercial plane was an Air Ceylon flight, which landed on 10th April 1962. Over the years, many improvements have taken place within the infrastructure and technological advances, such as building a dedicated departure terminal with its prayer adjoining later and establishment of a state-of-the air traffic control tower under the fourth phase. The Ministry of Defense says that Turkey will donate the TCG Vulcan, a Dogan-class fast attack craft, to the Maldives as a part of a bilateral agreement aimed at strengthening the island nation's maritime defense infrastructure. The ministry, in a statement, held the donation is part of the positive outcome of a dialogue with friendly nations to achieve President Dr. Mohammad Muiz's vision to double the surveillance and response capacity of the Maldives National Defense Force, MNDF. A special team of MNDF personnel is currently undergoing a training in Turkey in preparation for the operation of the vessel, the ministry said, adding that the newly equipped vessel will be a major boost to its capability to maintain safety and security of the country's territory and special economic zone. TCG Vulcan was commissioned into the Turkish Navy in May 1981 and reclassified in 2024 as a test and training vessel. Minister of Foreign Affairs Dr. Abdullah Halil has held discussions with high-ranking officials of Turkey and Hungary to enhance cooperation between the countries. Minister Dr. Halil is currently on an official visit to Turkey today on an invitation from his Turkish counterpart Hakan Fidan to attend the 4th edition of the Antalya Diplomacy Forum. During the visit from 11th to 13th April, the minister is meeting with his counterparts from friendly countries across the globe is the sidelines of the forum. In that regard, Minister Dr. Halil met with the Minister of Trade of the Turkey, Professor Dr. Omar Balat, where they shared insights on increasing trade and economic ties between the two countries. His second meeting was with the Minister of Culture and Tourism of Turkey, Mehmet Nuri Ersoy, to explore opportunities to enhance cooperation in the field of tourism between the two countries. On the sidelines of the forum, Minister Dr. Halil had also met his Hungarian counterpart, Peter Szojc. During the meeting, the two ministers discussed the progress of Maldives-Hungary relations and reaffirmed commitment to deepen the friendship in the years ahead. As part of his visit, Minister Dr. Halil had participated at a panel discussion titled Geostrategic Dynamics in the Asia-Pacific. Minister of Islamic Affairs Dr. Muhammad Shaheen Ali Saeed announces that the Zakat Fund scholarships will open this week as the Maldives Zakat House collected $6.48 million in property Zakat for 2024. This achievement marks the highest amount ever received in the nation's history and reflects the generosity of the Maldivian people and the government's strengthened efforts to bolster the Zakat system. According to the ministry, this remarkable growth is during the expansion of crucial initiatives, including scholarships for higher education and support for vital medical specializations.
As the ministry prepares to open applications for Zakat-funded scholarships this week, Minister Shaheen stated that the scholarships will provide opportunities for master's and doctoral degree PhD studies across key fields of Islamic knowledge. The minister also revealed that high-achieving Maldivian students currently pursuing Islamic studies independently in countries like Egypt and Saudi Arabia will receive financial assistance through the fund. The impact of the Zakat Fund extends beyond fostering Islamic scholarship. Minister Shaheen noted that through the Fi Sabilillah section, or charity given for the sake of Almighty Allah, the fund will address critical shortages in specialist areas, particularly in the medical field, including super specializations. Highlighting the significance of this milestone, Minister Shaheen credited the charitable contributions of the people for driving the Zakat Fund's growth, which he described as a victory for Islam. He added that resources would also be directed towards projects dedicated to spreading the knowledge of the Holy Quran and producing more hafizes. In addition to supporting education and Islamic initiatives, the Zakat Fund continues to assist the poor and needy through its Al-Fuqara wa Al-Masakin section, providing essential aid for medical treatments such as kidney transplants, bone marrow transplants, and care for individuals battling major illnesses like lung disease and cancer. Minister Shaheen lauded President Dr. Mohamed Muizz's role in strengthening the Maldivian Zakat system, which has yielded significant results. The ministry reported that more than $2.20 million has been collected as Zakat during the first quarter of 2025 alone. This year also saw the highest ever collection of Zakat al-Fitr, which was distributed equitably among the poor nationwide.
Minister of Health Abdullah Nazim Ibrahim has said that a government's efforts to address the shortage of prescription medicine in the Maldives are beginning to show results. The government has identified pharmaceutical spending as one of the most significant and wasteful areas in the healthcare system. According to Asan the Company Limited, which manages the National Health Insurance Scheme, over half of its total expenditure goes toward the importation of medicines, a cost that continues to rise annually. In response, President Dr. Mohamed Muizz has instructed relevant authorities to prevent the sale of imported medicines at excessively high profits. To ensure availability, the government has also directed the State Trading Organization Ethical Wholesaler Medicines list. While these reforms initially caused supply disruptions, and service delayed, and they are starting to take effect. He added that the government will continue to monitor the situation closely and intervene where necessary to resolve any emerging issues. Efforts to streamline some pharmaceutical supply through STO, the minister noted, will also help strengthen the organization's governance and improve its human resource capacity. National Cyber Security Agency (NCSA) reveals that the country is on track to launch a National Cyber Security Operations Center before the end of this year. The center is being established under efforts to bolster the digital defenses of the country. CEO of NCSA, Dr. Ahmad Naufal Abdul Hadi, stated that the agency's initiatives are part of a broader national effort to protect the state's cyber interest. Established in March last year under a presidential decree by President Dr. Mohammad Muiz, the NCSA operates under the Ministry of Interior and plays a central role in defining the coordinating Maldives' cyber security strategy. The agency is responsible for overseeing all cyber security matters, formulating national policies and standards, supporting public institutions in strengthening their defenses, and securing critical cyber infrastructure. Since its inception, notable progress has been made. In an interview on PSM News' Raj Miyadu, Dr. Hadi identified a major vulnerability in the public sector, the lack of a unified legal framework for cyber security. To address this, the NCSA, in collaboration with international partners, has drafted a comprehensive cyber security law now submitted to the Attorney General's office. The proposed legislation requires public sector entities to report cyber threats, comply with standardized security measures, and undergo regular audits and penetration tests. Once enacted, it will grant NCSA legal authority to monitor public sector compliance and receive real-time threat data. A key part of the agency's strategy in the upcoming launch of the National Cyber Security Operations Center, expected to be operational by year-end. The center will integrate real-time threat intelligence from global tech firms like Microsoft and Google, significantly enhancing the ability to detect and respond to threats. Dr. Hadi noted it could help address up to 80% of cyber incidents. US President Donald Trump says that 10% is a tariff floor or pretty close, and that there could be a couple of exceptions. He also told that he thought something positive would come out with China.
His remarks kept a volatile week for equity and bond markets and added fresh uncertainty for nations, investors and businesses already grappling with his evolving trade agenda. Earlier in the week, Trump announced sweeping new tariffs on several countries, only to delay them just hours later, after financial markets reacted sharply amid fears that his import taxes could hurt the global economy. While China, the world's second largest economy, now faces a steep 145% levy, Trump is sticking to the 10% baseline rate for most other nations, as foreign governments scramble to negotiate favorable terms with the US. The S&P 500 climbed 1.8%, capping its best week since 2023, boosted by a report that a Federal Reserve official signaled readiness to step in and stabilize markets if necessary. Yields on US 10-year treasuries retreated from their highs, though they posted their largest weekly jump in over 2 decades. Recent market volatility shows little sign of abating, with concerns growing that Trump's tariff-driven push to revive U.S. manufacturing and boost federal revenue could trigger recessions and erode America's status as a global safe haven. Trump, however, downplayed those concerns. He also dismissed recent Treasury market turbulence, something he had cited earlier in the week when adjusting his tariff timeline. Even with temporary relief for some trading partners, the sharply higher tariff on China is set to push the average U.S. duty rate to historic highs. The prolonged trade and conflict between the world's two largest economies now threatens $690 billion in bilateral trade. And in a tit-for-tat move, China raised tariffs on all U.S. goods to 125%, matching the new U.S. rate and layering it on top of an existing 20% tax.
India is a compelling case for the U.S. to enter a trade deal with, said Indian Trade Minister Piyush Goyal on Friday, amid talks on a bilateral trade agreement between the two countries.
U.S. President Donald Trump announced a 90-day pause on most tariff hikes for majority trading partners, including India, while raising levies on China, providing temporary relief for Indian exporters. India and the U.S. agreed in February to work on the first phase of a trade deal to be concluded late this year, with a view to reaching bilateral trade worth $500 billion by 2030.
We are amongst the first countries to engage with the U.S. and we are already in dialogue with the U.S. to come to a bilateral trade agreement which will be in the mutual interest of expanding business between the United States and India.
Trade discussions between the countries will continue virtually and regularly, the official said, adding there could be some delegation-level visits from both sides as part of the talks.
Looking at the growth that India offers in the next 25-30 years with a large population, young population, aspirational young Indians who will add to the demand for goods and services, we believe that India will be a compelling case to enter into a good agreement with the United States.
Talks when India-EU trade agreement stalled for 8 years resumed in 2021 now cover investment protection and geographical indications.
In the case of free trade agreements, these are indicative timelines. We aspire for those timelines, but end of the day, it has to be a win-win for both sides. It has to be a fair, equitable and balanced solution. Just to meet a deadline, you cannot compromise national interest.
The EU is India's largest trading partner in goods, with bilateral trade reaching $137.5 billion in 2023 to 2024 fiscal year, marking a growth of about 90% over the previous decade.
Israeli forces completes the encirclement of Gaza's Rafah is part of an announced plan to seize more areas of the enclave, accompanied by large-scale forced displacement of the population.
Footage released by the Israeli army, along with the statement, purported to show a brigade of troops marching past rubble and entering devastated empty buildings in Rafah. The Israeli military has issued repeated displacement orders to hundreds of thousands of Palestinians across Rafah since it resumed genocidal operations in Gaza on March 18, forcing them into a diminishing space limited by the sea. Israel said on April 2nd that troops had begun seizing an area it called the Morag Axis, a reference to a former illegal Israeli settlement once located between the cities of Rafah and Khan Yunis in southern Gaza. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians have since fled Rafah, a 60-square-kilometer area that borders Egypt to the south.
The United Nations Human Rights Office warns that the cumulative effects of death, destruction, displacement and denial of access to basic necessities in Gaza are increasingly threatening the existence of Palestinians.
The humanitarian situation in the enclave has deteriorated to the point of being described as hell on earth by the International Committee of Red Cross and Red Crescents.
Cumulative effect of what is happening in Gaza today, the death, the destruction, the displacement, the denial of access to basic necessities within Gaza, and the repeated suggestion that Gazans should leave the territory entirely raise real concerns as to the future viability of Palestinians as a group in Gaza.
Meanwhile, spokesperson for Office of UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Ravina Shamdasani said the cumulative effect of what is happening in Gaza today, the death and destruction, the displacement, the denial of access to basic necessities, and the repeated suggestions that Gazans should leave the territory entirely, raises real concerns as to the future viability of Palestinians as a group of people. The president of Red Cross further painted a grim picture of the humanitarian situation in Gaza and said that the organization's field hospital will run out of supplies in 2 weeks.
While Israel as an occupying power can lawfully order the temporary evacuations of civilians in certain areas under strict conditions, the nature and scope of the evacuation orders raises serious concerns that Israel intends permanently to remove the civilian population from these areas in order to create a so-called buffer zone. Permanently displacing the civilian population within occupied territory amounts to forcible transfer, which is a grave breach of the Fourth Geneva Convention and a crime against humanity.
She described pressure on medical care as organization had to refocus on surgery to treat mass casualties following Israel's resurgence of airstrikes on the enclave since 18th March. Speaking at a UN briefing from Jerusalem, WHO representative for occupied Palestinian territories, Rick Peeperkorn, also said that the medicine stocks are critically low due to the aid block in Gaza, making it hard to keep hospitals even partially operational. Last month, Israel broke a ceasefire reached in January after the two sides failed to agree on terms for extending it. Israel has said its military operations will continue until the remaining 59 hostages still held by Hamas and other militant groups are returned. Hamas said it will not free them without a deal that would bring a permanent end to the war. Israel's military campaign in the Palestinian enclave has killed more than 50,000 Palestinians since 2023, local health officials said, and left the coastal territory in ruins and nearly all of its people homeless.
Iran and the United States will hold high-level talks in Oman aimed at jump-starting negotiations over Tehran's fast advancing nuclear program, with U.S. President Donald Trump threatening military action if there is no deal.
Iranian media reported that Iran and U.S. delegations have arrived in Muscat. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi is leading the Iranian delegation, while the talks will be handled on the U.S. side by Trump's Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff. Iran is approaching the talks warily, skeptical that they could lead to a deal and suspicious of Trump, who has repeatedly threatened to bomb Iran if it does not hold its nuclear program. While each side has talked up the chances of some progress, they remain far apart on a dispute that has rumbled on for more than 2 decades and have not agreed on whether the talks will be face-to-face, as Trump demands, or indirect, as Iran wants.
Professional Tennis Players Association Chief Ahmed Nassar welcomed the demand by the world's top-ranked players for higher prize money at the Grand Slams and believes the move is a direct consequence of the advocacy group's calls for change.
Co-founded in 2020 by Novak Djokovic and Vasek Pospisil, with the intention of being the voice of the players and the catalyst for change, the PTPA filed a class action lawsuit against the sport's governing bodies last month, calling for reforms. That was followed by a letter from the top 20 ATP and WTA players seeking a bigger slice of the pie from the 4 majors. Although the PTPA was not a signatory to it, Nassar said more pressure on the system was appreciated.
Right? These are no accidents, right? These are things that are direct responses and indirect causes and reactions to the overall pressure that is being put on this system, right? And so that letter was great because it called on the Grand Slams to pay more money in prize money, to pay more money in benefits, but it's incomplete, right? Because it's only focused on the Grand Slams. Well, that's 4 events a year. That's not going to solve the issues with the schedule. It's not going to solve the issues with inconsistent balls. It's not going to solve the anti-doping issues, right? But it's still useful because it's more pressure on the system. It's just incomplete, right? So I welcome that. But again, we wrote letters 2 years ago. We wrote letters last year. You know what people do with letters they don't necessarily like? They ignore them. You know what you can't do with a lawsuit? Ignore it.
The French Open and the US Open confirmed to Reuters that they had received the letter and welcomed conversations with the players ahead of Roland Garros, which will begin next month. Nasser said the PTPA, which filed its lawsuit in New York, London and Brussels against the ATP and the WTA, the International Tennis Federation and the International Tennis Integrity Agency, was focused on delivering major structural reforms.
The world's oldest gorilla was presented with a basket full of fruit and vegetable delights as she celebrated her 68th birthday at the Berlin Zoo.
At the historic age of 68, the Western lowland gorilla was doing well, Berlin Zoo veterinary Andrea Schul told Reuters TV, adding that she was certainly no spring chicken anymore, suffering from typical age-related aches and pains such as stiff knees, arms and arthrosis. Having no teeth anymore, Fatou needs her vegetables cooked, and cracking walnuts is not an option anymore. But as a compensation, she is unlike the other gorillas, allowed a few fruits. On her birthday, she tucked into strawberries, plums and apples. According to Berlin Zoo, Western lowland gorillas are an endangered species after their natural habitat was continuously decimated. They live in the tropical rainforests of Cameroon, the Central African Republic, Gabon and Republic of Congo, and are the largest ape species with a weight of up to 200 kgs.
And that's all we have for this hour. Thank you for watching. Wish you all a very pleasant time ahead.